Starting Point Coaching and Consulting presents Kairos Conversations, Connecting with Quality, the podcast. Kairos is Greek for the right time, the right season, the right opportunity. This podcast features healthcare quality professionals who share their journeys, their advice, their struggles, how they made that transition into a new and exciting role. My heart's desire is that you find this podcast to be inspirational to you as you make your own journey. Don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues and friends and rate us on whichever podcast platform you listen to. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I am joined by my next guest, Dr. Adaira Landry. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Landry.
Thank you, Brandy. I'm really excited to chat with you.
All right, let's start by introducing yourself to the audience.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Adaira Landry. I'm an emergency medicine doctor in Boston and an assistant professor of emergency medicine as well at the academic school I work at. And I have a position as an advisor. So I advise about 40 or so medical students along their journey of medical school. And when I'm not doing that academic work, I like to write. I like to write for Teen Vogue. I'm a healthcare contributor for Forbes, and I've written for Harvard Business Review and a lot of, larger lay outlets. And I got really inspired to do that. So inspired that I decided to write a book. So I'm actually also writing a book on the workplace that I'll talk to you about called MicroSkills. And when I'm not doing the writing, I love to teach people to write. And so I have a nonprofit called writingincolor.org, which is really motivated by my own personal experiences learning how to write. And our mission is to teach people of color how to write for free. And I guess when I'm not doing that, I see patients in the emergency room. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm at home taking care of my kids. I have 3 kids, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an almost 7-year-old.
Wow, you lead a busy life.
Yes, but I don't do everything all at once. There are some days where I'm just writing and some days where I just see patients. So I fluctuate a little bit.
Okay. So let's talk about how did you get where you are? So what was your background, your journey to get you into emergency medicine and doing the work that you love with writing and teaching others about writing?
Yeah, definitely was not a planned journey. If you had told me that I'd be writing a book and having a nonprofit 10 years ago, I would have been shocked. But I'll summarize it by saying I was born in San Bernardino County in California, and wonderful people surrounded me, but not many of those people were professionals in the sense that they weren't lawyers or engineers or doctors. My dad has a community college education. I don't actually think he even finished the community college program. And then my mom ultimately went back to school to be a nurse, but that was, when I was closer to graduating from high school. So I was lucky though that they were very focused on me and really, really interested in my education. And so I studied a lot. And I actually ended up getting accepted to UC Berkeley at 15. And then I moved out of my parents' house from SoCal, all the way up to the Bay Area when I was 16, which, it isn't like record-breaking young, but considering where I grew up, that was very shocking for most people that I was able to do that. And after Berkeley, I went to UCLA and then NYU for residency. While I was at UCLA for medical school, I recognized something that I think perhaps your listeners would really relate to, which is that some people are able to move their career much faster than others because of their network and who they have as mentors and sponsors and coaches. I had none of that. I did not have any mentorship until the very end of my medical school journey. But I saw all of my peers getting awards and publishing papers and giving talks, like way more than I ever would. And my first mentor actually is a Black woman. And she reached out to me and said, I'm going to support you in your journey through residency. And she actually requested me to be her mentor when I matched in that residency program. So she sought me out, which is like just a completely different start to when I started medical school. And I learned a lot about networking from that standpoint. and how important networking is so important when it comes to getting opportunities. And by the time I got to my current institution, I was getting a master's and a fellowship, and I was really focusing my career on training young professionals on how to navigate their career. And I was really inspired to do that because of my own journey. And I started writing after George Floyd's murder because I was really inspired by my thoughts, quite frankly. So I co-authored a piece and thought, this needs to be said publicly. And that was the pivotal moment for me where I said, oh my God, I can write something and it's published and people from all over the world can read it. And it became really addicting. And it's funny because I'm not someone who's seeking fame. I'm not really on social media. I don't do that stuff, but I love to write. To me, it's writing is like solving a puzzle. Mm-hmm. And I like to write because I like to figure out what's the best word for a sentence. It's just fun. It's just fun for me. And that part became very addicting. And so, I write about 2 or 3 hours a day, sometimes way more than that. And I don't publish everything, but I love to write. So that's a really long answer. But that's how I came here is because I sort of saw the difference in, mentorship that others had versus myself, found that and started to grow my network, met people who were like-minded, also like to write. Now I have all of these people who I write with, just this really amazing network of writers. And that helps me learn and collaborate.
So I love that you said that. And I want to circle back to something you said. Do you feel that your defining point was when that mentor reached out to you and sought you out? Or do you feel like it was more when George Floyd was murdered?
It kind of depends on what part of life I'm talking about. If I'm talking about the value of mentorship, for sure, it was her reaching out. If I'm talking about the power of my voice, it was that first piece I published. So I guess we can have more than one pivotal moment in life, but she was definitely the first person who looked at me, who looked like me, and said, you can do what I'm doing. You can have everything that I'm having. And so that was really groundbreaking as someone who hadn't had that kind of encouragement. Of course, in high school, I was a straight A student, so I had a lot of people encouraging me, but they didn't look like me. And they also weren't doing the job that I wanted. I didn't want to be a high school teacher. And so, having someone who was in the exact institution I wanted to work in, doing the exact same job, who was also a Black woman, and her telling me, you can do something. You know what she said to me once, Brandy, was we went to a cafe and she was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do after residency? And I was like, I'm just going to go see patients, because that's how I was thinking about life. Just like I'm going to do exactly what is expected of me. I go to medical school to see patients. I'm going to see patients. She stopped me and she says, you can do so much more with your MD than just see patients.
Wow.
Aren't you aware of that? And I was like an intern. So, I had no idea, because everyone really in my department was just seeing patients. They didn't really have startups and all these things. But it was after that moment I started to recognize and pay attention to the wider landscape of medicine. And I saw that, yeah, you're right. Doctors can be consultants. Doctors can be coaches. Doctors can be writers. So it was really just that light bulb going off saying, yeah, I can do more than just what my degree expected of me.
That resonates with me so much, Adaira, because my audience and even myself have faced the same thing, right? So we don't know that other things are available to us with our degree, and no one teaches us that in school. And in physical therapy school, no one really told me that I could do something else with my PT degree other than see patients, right? And to be the best clinician that I could be. Mm-hmm. Consulting and even going into some of the healthcare quality spaces that I've been in was not even a thing that was brought up. It never crossed my mind as a student, and no one ever told me. So that just resonates with me so deeply.
I mean, it really speaks to the power of networking. And I use this example all the time in my lectures about networking, where if I were to ask my 5-year-old daughter, what do you want to be when you grow up? She almost always says doctor, because that's what she knows. mommy is a doctor of human bodies and daddy is a doctor of computers. He has a PhD. But, that's what she knows, right? She would never say architect. She doesn't even know that architect is an occupation, right? Because I never talk to her about it. We don't read books about architects. She doesn't have any parents, parents who are architects. You know what I mean? She doesn't know that exists. And so the same thing is true for adults trying to find their path. If you only rely on the people right in front of you to show you what's possible, you're going to just follow their footsteps. And so the power of networking is really doing the hard work, which is like going out there, joining social media groups, going to conferences, having conversations with people. And, I'm actually quite an introvert. I don't like to do big things.
Same.
But you can still network as an introvert, right? Like I love like this, Brandy. I love one-on-one conversations. I love, people stigmatize the DMs like, oh, they're all up in my DMs. But that is the way to do social media.
100%.
I want to be in the DMs. So that's the way to leverage social media, not by like what you post, it's by who you talk to. And so I DM people all the time on social media. They post something I like. I'm like, this was really interesting. Here's what I like about it. If you ever want to connect, I'm happy to meet with you for 10 minutes. Like, you know what I mean? You kind of put yourself out there and people might not respond. That's fine. People might say no, but at least you try.
Yeah, I love that you said that because that was my next question is what's the simplest way for someone to get started? Because a lot of people in my network or in my audience have this fear of networking. It becomes like this dirty word. But I love that you said the action is in the DMs. If you can make it if you're a one-on-one person, make it one-on-one in the DMs.
There's also a lot of power to just observation. So I think observation is probably this. I should write an article about this, but I think observation is the secret best way to network. And there's like passive networking where you don't actually interact with the person, but you observe what they do. And so I do that a lot. Like just today, some really amazing person on LinkedIn, a Black woman who's like really just well-known and respected. And I had never heard of her before today. And someone said, you need to follow her. And I was like, I'm going to follow her and I'm going to see what she does. I'm going to learn from her experiences and model myself after those things and learn from someone who's doing it well, right? And so in some ways, I'm not necessarily forming a connection with her, but she's like functioning like a mentor or a coach by just being present and available for others to observe. And I think there's actually a lot of power to that. So what I do is, I haven't done it yet for this person, but I'll eventually look at who she's following. And then I'll follow those people as well. Because if someone's only following like 50 people, they're probably following that 50 people is probably like a very curated list of people who are teaching them. And so I just like will follow those people too and see what they're up to.
That's a really great idea. I haven't taken it to that level. I have connected. No, seriously. I've connected with people to learn from them, right? I don't want them to do anything for me. I just want to follow their posts, see what they're posting, learn from them. And I've definitely done that. But to go to the next level and look at who they're following, I just took a nugget away from that, Adaira.
I know. I hope that doesn't sound creepy. I mean, but
in the best way.
Yeah, it's really just meant to go back to that initial point, which is like exposure, right? Like it's just to expose yourself to what's possible. And I think for folks like me, maybe folks like you, like no one's handing us opportunity, right? And so, I mean, that has not been my experience. No one's coming up to me and saying, you should have this position. I want you to have it. I'm not even going to interview other people. It's yours. That has never happened to me, right? And so for me to get things, like I have to be actively engaged. Like we say in the book, no one's coming to save you. And I think that's actually a quite famous phrase. We didn't coin it or anything, but it's so true. We had to mention it, that no one's going to save your career. And if you're really ambitious, I'm a very ambitious person, Brandy. I think you're ambitious too. Uh-huh. And if you are, ambition's not a lazy sport. Like you have to really be engaged. And so, yeah, I'll probably spend about 50% of my time just perusing and observing what other people have done as a way to be inspired and get ideas. And then maybe the other 50% of my time on social media is just connecting with people one-on-one.
Yeah, that's really meaningful because I find I'm an introvert as well. And people wouldn't believe that about me because I'm in an extroverted career, but I have the most fun with one-on-ones and small groups because that's where I learn the most. That's where I feel the safest. That's where I feel like I can be my most authentic self.
Yep, exactly. And so for those who feel like, networking is a stigmatized or dirty word, like I get it. But I also want to add this. When you network, you can help other people too.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that balances it out. Like, I'm not reaching out to someone just so that they can help me. And then I like forget about them. But I always at the end say, how can I help you? Like what in what ways would I be helpful to you? And I think that to me feels like it's more mutual beneficial because you're not just taking, you're also building this like back and forth relationship where you have people who could be of use to someone else. Share that. If you want to amplify their work on social media as a payback, do that, right? If you want to nominate them for an award, that's also great. But there are ways to give back. And to me, that helps it feel more human-like, because I'm just able to really show like, hey, we actually care about each other. That is actually, really important too.
Yeah, because then it's not just transactional. No one wants a purely transactional relationship, right?
Exactly. And I think, I should say this. There are some relationships that are transactional. Like, I'm an advisor. And as an advisor, a student will come to me and say, when's the best date to take this exam? And I might just reply with, a date range, like, oh, I would take it this time. And so there might be some moments where I'm just advising them very quickly. And I think there's a place for that. And I share that because sometimes the mentee or the advisee, they have the wrong expectation of what they need or what they can get out of a relationship. So I've had a student who almost felt like I was their personal assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was probably there were too many demands, and that it was like I was stepping out of my role as an advisor to some other role. And so I think it's important. I learned, this was really early on in my job. I didn't know anything about expectations and setting boundaries, but it's important to define the relationship. It doesn't have to be a legal contract or anything, but to define what that person's role is for you and how you can help them. There's coaches, there's sponsors, there's mentors, there are advisors, there's champions. These are all different terms, and one person can sort of weave in and out of the same role. I mean, in and out of different roles, within the same conversation. But it's important to kind of recognize that it's not all the same so that you have the correct expectations of what that person can do for you.
Define the relationship. Define the relationship doesn't have to just be romantic relationships, right? It can be any relationship so that the expectations are clear and set out. That way people don't get disappointed because someone didn't meet an expectation that was never supposed to be.
I think the most dangerous thing in the workplace is an assumption, because you can, you can offend someone.
Uh-huh.
You can have the wrong idea about what they are trying to say. There could be confusion, and it's going to take time now to undo all of that confusion. There's many things, right, that can cause problems when you just assume something. So, there's a lot of power in asking a question such as, how would you like to navigate this relationship? What's the best way? What's your preferred method of, networking and interacting with people, right?
Right.
Sometimes people assume that text is the best means to communicate with someone you're networking with. And some people don't like text, especially across generation lines, right? And so, if I meet someone for the first time, I assume email is best until they offer me something else, right? I'm not going to like text them at 9 o'clock or 2 in the morning or on the weekends or holidays. It all goes back to just navigating those assumptions and just going straight into asking a question.
Right. That way it's clear. Brene Brown says, clear is kind.
Yeah, she gets quoted for that one a lot. I mean, I'm sure there were equivalent quotes before her, but yes, clear is kind, unclear is unkind is pretty catchy. And so it's true. Like, she's right. I read that book. I love that book because it gives a lot of actionable strategies, which is be upfront with people when you're meeting them.
Absolutely. I want to pause for a moment to share something with you, my friend. After landing several non-clinical roles and coaching others to do the same, I have found that if you're running into roadblocks, making that pivot out of direct patient care, it's because of one of three reasons. One, you haven't quite figured out what you want to do yet, and that's okay. But take the time to dive deep to figure that out. Number two, your resume screams clinician. And number three, you haven't demonstrated value and impact in your current role. Regardless of which reason resonates most deeply with you, I'll share some resources to help in the show notes section of this podcast. So circling back to your experience as an emergency medicine physician.
Yeah.
What kind of things did you see there that kind of led you to believe healthcare is broken? Or do you think healthcare is broken?
I would say, I'm going to speak for myself, and then I'll speak for the wider group. It is really tough to be a doctor these days. I still love patient interactions. Like, I love connecting with my patients. I love asking them to show me, pictures of their kids and tell me about how they were, diagnosed with some chronic illness. Like, I love just that human touch, even in the emergency room. So I think for me, that part hasn't really gone away. I think the hard part is that medicine is becoming more corporate and more of a business. I mean, it's always been a business, but it's truly a business now. And that means that doctors, nurses are being pushed more, because if you can squeeze more energy out of a human being, you make more money. The problem with healthcare, it doesn't really operate like pushing people at a fast food restaurant to work faster. There's so many more emotions involved with patient care that if you don't have time to debrief, relax, connect, reflect, grow, learn, like all those human things, then work just becomes very mechanical. And this is a job that is like built upon compassion and communication and connection. And you try to all of a sudden change the mold to where it's very transactional. And it's like, go faster, move faster, push patients through faster. Those are different metrics compared to what the people who go into medicine intending to do,
right,
which is connect and offer grace and understanding and, all of that slower building stuff gets washed away. And now it just feels like its own version of a fast food restaurant where you're just pushing people through. And the volume is another thing, which is, I think, that's out of the physician's hands, is out of the nurse's hands. If hospitals are closing locally, which is happening all across the country, those patients have to go somewhere else. And that to me was like the origin of a lot of the crowding, was the closure of primary care clinics, was the closure of local hospitals. And those patients have to go somewhere, and they go to the emergency room. To your question about, is healthcare damaged? I don't remember the exact words you used. Is it about to collapse? I mean, I think we're like at the point where maybe the next 5 or 10 years will really answer that question. I think there are a lot of solutions on their way, like using AI to chart so that you're not stuck at the computer all day. You can be with the patient. I think that is a potential solution that can really shave off a lot of that burnout. And so I'm really curious to see how we fold in technology as a way to sort of become more efficient, so that the human isn't pushed too much, but technology is pushed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very interesting because there's a lot of discussion, obviously, about AI and using it ethically and what's its role in healthcare. And I also think that there's a role in healthcare. I don't have that clearly mapped out in my mind, but if it can take some of the workload off of the frontline provider, clinician, so that they can focus on, like you said, providing compassionate care and really listening and being present and being able to use their clinical judgment with the patient instead of thinking, where do I chart this thing? I think it can have great benefit.
I think so. I mean, I think there are, and you know, I don't want to get too heavy into the companies, but there are definitely a lot of companies that are, I think, looking at solutions. I just going back to our theme of pivoting. At one point in time, I pivoted a little bit more out of medicine, and I joined a startup. Again, not knowing that was something that I could do. I became the lead consultant for an AI ultrasound company. And I had a team of like 14 docs and engineers and marketing and sales, this whole multidisciplinary team that I led, which was really exciting. I did that for 2 years. And, you know, if I think back to how I got into that role, I remember asking some of my colleagues, like, how do you get into consulting? And I got kind of a response that was, you know, more vague. It was like, you just need to be in the right place at the right time and put your name in the basket, which I think is all true, but it wasn't specific enough for me to actually take that advice and do something. But what I did was I got an email from that company. Just they were sending me something like from like a sales rep, like, hey, buy our ultrasound device for your department. And I actually I was like, let me just, again, try to be more involved in my own career. So I sent a reply back saying, I'm an emergency medicine doc. I do ultrasounds. I love technology. I love education. Are you guys hiring? And it started off with a conversation, and then I went to like 3 hours a week, and then 8 hours a week, and then 14. I think by the end, I was up to about 20 hours a week of consulting. That's a lot of consulting. And I was working with this company like very heavily. It was wonderful. And, you know, I credit that start of, you know, that opportunity to just me seeing an email in front of me saying, well, what could go wrong? It would just be that they don't reply.
Right. The worst they can say is no, right? Or not reply at all.
Well, you know, I used to say the worst they can say is they don't reply. But honestly, the worst that can happen is you don't send the email and they would have said yes. I think that's like the worst way. So I think of things that way now. Like, man, what if I don't send this? And on the other side of this opportunity is a yes.
That's a mic drop right there.
You know, because I think most people aren't going to be mean. And I'm not sure if we fear someone being upset that we reach out. So even if they say no, most people are going to be kind when they decline. They're going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time," or "I'm so sorry, we're not hiring," or "I'm sorry, come back in 6 months." Right? And if they're really mean, they just reveal themselves to you, and you don't want to work with them anyway.
Yeah, that was a gift.
That was a gift. And so I think there really isn't a reason to be afraid, because it's either going to be a kind response or they're going to be having a bad day and they need their own source of healing and they take it out on you. But most people are going to be nice or just not respond.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The worst that can happen is you don't send the email, you don't make the request, and the answer would have been yes. We need to post that tomorrow on LinkedIn. That is so good. I'm just thinking about that now. I'm just replaying that. That is absolutely right. The worst that can happen is they would have said yes, but you didn't try.
Exactly.
So now you are currently doing emergency medicine, but you're also doing writing, which you have found a love for. Let's talk a little bit about your book so people will know. And I will post the link to the book in the show notes. But tell us about your book.
Yes. So I'm co-authoring a book with another physician, Dr. Risa E. Lewis, and we are aligned in that there is a playbook, there are strategies out there that some have access to and some do not. And so we wanted to write the book that we wish we had. When it comes to writing a book, especially getting a book deal, and I'd be happy to come back and do, another podcast if we don't have time today to talk about getting a book deal, because that's its own thing. But when we were getting a book, trying to get a book deal, you have to read a bunch of comparative titles. And I had already read a bunch of business self-help books before, but you have to read it, again and do some deep research. So we read a lot of books and found that many of them were written by older white men who are executives, CEOs, top tier consultants. And a lot of their advice, was sort of taken from their perspective. Like, if you need something, go to your boss and just ask. Well, that's not going to be easy for everyone. and how do you ask? And what happens if your ask is seen as aggressive, or too assertive? And so we wanted to come in and write a book that gives people direct strategies as a way to level the playing field. Like I told you earlier, when it comes to reaching out and sending that email, like we give templates and things like that. Like how do you message the email when you're reaching out to someone? Which honestly it's not that impressive of language, but just the clarity is very helpful to the reader. Like, oh, that's all I have to say. And we wanted the book to be efficient. So the tagline for the book is, buy this book on Friday, be better at your job on Monday. And we wanted that to be the case so people feel like as they're reading it page by page, they're having just a ton of skills thrown at them that are easily implementable. So like, you're not going to find in our book, go get a degree, because you can't get a degree in a weekend. Right. So we're not going to tell that kind of advice. But we might say, on LinkedIn, find someone who has an MBA and follow them and ping them and ask them why they got the MBA. So we give advice that we feel like is immediately actionable, because that's important for, I think, a lot of people. And I think the third thing about it is that it's written by two women physicians, one a Black woman, one a mid-career white woman. And we inject a lot about self-care, self-compassion. We don't tell you that success is only through self-sacrifice. Our opening chapter is MicroSkills for self-care. We talk about rest. We talk about your physical health. We talk about getting on top of your personal finances. Because if those are in a bad situation, it's not the right time to network. Like, you need to take care of the self first. So we have a lot of language about how important it is to take care of the self. And then you can take care of the team. And then you can start taking care of the work. And again, I think a lot of that is born from just being physicians and seeing the effects of stress on our patients. And many people are stressed about work or the interaction of life and work, meaning their personal lives and work. So I think those are probably the three big things in the book that are unique. But there's a lot of content. We're getting a lot of advice and positive feedback on marketing. It's been a really amazing experience.
So this is a very practical book, and anyone who is wanting to either advance in their current role or pivot to a new role, or if they're in business, any of those types of individuals would benefit from this book?
Yeah, actually, our 10th chapter, the chapters are in order for a reason, but the 10th chapter is MicroSkills to actively find new opportunities. And the first microskill we teach you is learning how to convert your skills, meaning, when I was a physician, I took those skills as a physician and I used that to become a consultant. I was able to tell the CEOs and the engineers, like, this is how physicians behave and use ultrasound, because I had the training in that field. And so many of us are sitting on skills that we don't even know exist, right? Like, your podcast is a perfect opportunity for you to become, and maybe you're already doing this, but a keynote speaker, right? Because you're doing all this public speaking with these interviews, like you should be giving big keynotes. I'm at national conferences. And so taking your public speaking skills and saying, where else could I use these is, something that maybe not everyone considers, especially early in their career.
That is huge because my audience and the people that I get to interact with personally when they reach out to me have a very difficult time translating their skills in the clinical world to skills in a different role that's not direct patient facing. But they're sitting on a gold mine. They just don't know how to articulate that when they're either on their resume or in an interview or when talking to someone and selling themselves, so to speak.
We have a chart in the book that I don't remember the specific examples. Oh my God, this book has so many words. And I'm like, but we have a chart that's like, this is what you do, in your spare time. Like you're a yoga instructor, for instance, or you just do yoga on your own. And that skill teaches you, about posture, about emotional control, about perhaps even body language. And in the workplace, that could be used to lead a workshop on mindfulness and emotional regulation. Like you can take those skills and do something about it outside of just your own personal hobby or interest.
Wow. Yeah. I could see how we could have an even more in-depth conversation. This is all so good. And it translates to so many different types of career journeys.
It does. I mean, I think about writing. I had to write a lot of patient charts, through medical school and residency. But those were all skills that taught me how to be sharp with words and efficient with words and type quickly. And I use those skills now as a writer for a completely different audience. Like I'm writing an article right now that I'm hoping to go on like Marie Claire. And so, I think that's a very different audience than a hospital that's going to be read by other physicians or PAs or PTs. So, but those skills are the same, which is like being clear, being brief, being descriptive, right? And so you can take those skills and put them in a different venue.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want people to take the time, go to the show notes, check out this book. It is called MicroSkills, Small Actions, Big Impact. How can people connect with you or find you?
I always offer this every single podcast, and I'm so sad no one takes me up for it, but I truly do mean it. So I have a personal website, www.AdairaLandryMD.com. And on there, I have a little bit of a bio, and I know I need to update it. I'm sorry. I've just been so busy with the book. But there's something that is very active, which is like the contact me part. And you can reach out to me then. If you have any questions. And then I'm on the socials. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I am not like very active with posting, you'll see, but I'll respond to DMs. Like those are open and I'm happy to connect with people that way. And then my co-author is the same. Risa Lewis is on all of those things and she has a personal website. But we're really happy, to hear feedback. So if you like the book, if you buy the book, MicroSkills, Small Actions, Big Impact, take a photo of yourself holding it. Amazon reviews, please. Those are very helpful for us. And an honest review is helpful. If you're going to post something on social media, tag us. We'd love to see it. All that engagement is great for the soul.
Absolutely. So I will put the link to your LinkedIn. I will put your websites and a link to purchase the book for those who want to support or want to read and learn. I mean, this is some very good information and very actionable, very practical. So go out and grab it. Are there any parting words you want to leave with the audience?
I will say, don't wait to go after your dreams. And I'm really saying that as a doctor. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but it's just tomorrow is truly, truly never guaranteed. And I've seen so many people who thought they had more time to do those things that they were always putting off, and reality hits. So, I would say if there's something you've always wanted to do, you've always wanted to open that coffee shop or that bookstore, just move and do it. The moment you can, just do it, because you'll never regret, taking care of yourself and your dreams.
Well, I have really, really enjoyed our conversation. I really appreciate you for taking the time to be on the podcast and share your journey with my audience. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brandy. I had a great time.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. It would mean a lot if you would share this episode with a friend or a colleague. I would be honored to encourage them in their journey too.